Hey guys, welcome back to AFK Journey. In today's video, I want to do a video going through the top 5 most important must-have units for early game progression. Now, let me know if you do like this video in the comments, and we can go ahead and do one for the mid-game, talking about like Mythic Plus level characters that are going to really break the game for you. But this one is those characters in the early game that one copy of them absolutely changes the entire game and allows you to push further than having any other character, essentially. So the number one hero must have, and I've played through an account without this character and an account with this character, and it is honestly night and day like improvements. I'm like 2 extra story stages through at the exact same time, just thanks to Smokey. Smokey is completely cracked. Now, the thing about Smokey is when we tested on PTR for early progression, Coco came as the last character. So I myself never tested the early game push with Coco, and Coco completely changed things to where maulers are even more viable now, and the whole synergy of the team works so much better. Previously, I was liking the Thoren Viperian combo with Cecilia, then you run some tanks and some healers and stuff and you're good. But because maulers are just so dominant, Smokey is just got, he's like, the Smokey stocks just went up and he got even better. And this guy is just absolutely cracked, whether it be in Dream Realm, because in the early game, Dream Realm still matters, because getting through Dream Realm stages also gets you extra experience and gear, which then helps you progress through everything else, which then helps you progress back in the Dream Realm. So Dream Realm early game is super, super important. So him in campaign, in AFK stage pushing, and also in the Dream Realm is super important. His consistent healing is the thing. It's basically this ult that has the passive where he just consistently heals. Now, sometimes you do have to mess around with stages to try and get him to avoid control effects, because if he gets controlled, he's absolutely useless. But this guy just... he is the most important character to have on your account if you do want to push in the early game. My account, I was pretty happy with my account. I got like a Thoren early. I got a Rowan who was a good healer, but I thought I was going to pull the guy. And if you have that shafted luck, and all the Smokey-less people out there, let me know, you know it's pain. What am I, like 500 summons into my main account? Cannot get myself a Smokey, and it really does hurt. But this guy is like the most pivotal character, and the great thing is, if you are starting a fresh account, you can reroll for him. You got a 1 in 3 chance to get him from your 30th pull. So Smokey, absolute monster unit. The next one, which may come as a bit of a surprise, but the next most pivotal unit in my opinion in the early game is Brutus at 1 copy. Now, when I talk, and I'll talk about the 7-day selector thing, because there is caveats to this, but I think Brutus in the early game for a brand new account is the second most pivotal character next to Smokey if you're trying to push really high deficits, because once you start pushing those high deficits, even having a Thoren, who is an amazing tank, isn't going to be as effective as a Brutus, because Brutus has the straight immortality. The problem with a Thoren is that he dies, they gain access to your back row, and if you're at a real high deficit, you can even be running Thoren with Antandra, and they can clear through the Antandra and get to your back row in the time that Thoren revives. So Thoren is amazing, but I think for this high deficit pushing in the early game, Brutus is actually the next most pivotal unit. However, on my other account where I don't have Brutus, when I got my 7-day selector, I still chose Iron. That's because as you get further, I feel like the Brutus stocks diminish, especially once you get into start making some Mythic Plus characters and you start running different formations. Leaving Brutus on the wish list until you get 1 copy is still a fantastic idea, but I don't think on the 7-day selector, selecting him over an Iron is going to be a priority for most people anyway. But still, if you can get a copy of this guy on day 1, he makes such a big difference paired with Smokey for that pushing. So Brutus definitely gets a gold medal for the early game. Definitely doesn't even get a medal in the late game from what I've seen so far. But early game, the dude is an absolute savage. All right. So that's the first 2 out of the way. Like I said, I think those are the 2 most pivotal units in the game, early game, to get a copy of. Next unit is Rowan. Now, I don't actually have Rowan on this account. Now, when you look at your 30, if I was re-rolling for an optimal account, I would be going for Smokey every day of the week. There is no doubt about it. Smokey, just too good. But Rowan is a super clutch unit to have in addition to Smokey. Not instead of Smokey, but in addition to Smokey. There are some stages where that energy potion comes in super clutch to get you that extra top off to allow your tanks to survive until maybe your Cecilia ults and controls the enemy team or something like that. Also, the energy allows you to get everyone ramping up faster. He's one of those units that when you're pushing at high deficits, he's not going to be used in every team, but there are just some formations that he is super clutch in and just makes the team function a lot better. The other thing is Rowan is much better in PvP early game than Smokey. Smokey gets controlled and loses effectiveness. Rowan lets you ult first and normally gives you the advantage in the game. So PvP isn't really that important in the early game. So Smokey better than Rowan in AFK stage pushing, but Rowan does come in clutch in some situations. And then Smokey better in Dream Realm as well. But Rowan better in PvP, but PvP is the lowest priority in early game. You just want to, you can just fight weaker enemies and get some victories, so it's not too stressful there. But Rowan super clutch with his energy and also that healing potion to really just stall some extra time. But he will never, if you have a Smokey, you'll probably in the early game never use Rowan without having him side by side with the Smokey. Like it's either using Smokey and Rowan, or you're using Smokey, and that is the way it works. Now, the next unit on my list, so that is my first 3 units. Smokey, most important, most game-changing unit, then Brutus for the early game, and then Rowan. And the next one is still going to be Thoren. Even though I said Thoren is not as good as Brutus in that in the campaign stages and stuff like that, some situations he does come in clutch in campaign where you do want him in like an optimal team if you have him. However, the reason I'm putting Thoren in here is because he's super fantastic for the Dream Realm. And as I mentioned earlier, Dream Realm becomes very important when you're looking at trying to get higher scores to get yourself some more experience so that or better weapons so that you can push AFK stages and then maybe clear an enemy in Dream Realm, get some more experience, which lets you push further. So Dream Realm still has a very high priority in the early game, and Thoren is just the best tank for it. And in the early game, you will often be using a tank. It's just the way it works when you get into a new difficulty. You need that tankiness. Thoren has the second life, which is god tier in King Croker, but just good for every boss battle that you have, because most people in the early game will be running a probably 2 DPS being in most boss battles being Cecilia and also Odie. Odie, yes, dude. They changed his name from Eddie a while back, and I always get stumbled when I say it. But Odie as well, and Odie has that poison, so sometimes even Thoren dying and then reviving is the last unit, and you keep getting the poison ticks can get you into higher damage. But he also has the debuff capability where he's going to amplify the damage that enemies take, which is absolutely fantastic. You can see he also makes the target receive 13% more damage for the rest of the battle. That is a fantastic effect. So he's got great damage amplification, great tankiness. He also has great damage when he actively uses his ult and revenges the damage. So honestly, this character, like second best tank in campaign in the early game, becomes even better in the late game. And like obviously you want him for future investment because you're going to need copies of this guy. But then for Dream Realm in the early game, dude just absolutely gets you the best possible scores that you can. So that is my top 4. And once again, though these are not free to play, no, you can't just get all of these characters for free. And that's why I wanted to mention them, because if you pick them up, you really want to be using these characters. Now, the last one I'm going to mention, I was looking for a 5th epic unit, but I don't think there is a 5th epic unit that really is pivotal in these early stages. And the last one I wanted to go into was an elite unit that you're not given a copy of. Like Antandra, you're given copies of through missions and stuff like that. The last unit is Coco. I think Coco, if you somehow have not had her on the wish list, even though I highly recommend to everyone from the Dream Store buying just Odie copies only, if you didn't have Coco on your wish list, just pick up a copy of Coco. Like, put her on the wish list until you get one, or just pick one up from the Dream Realm. This character is crazy. Like I said, she was the last character released to the game before the global launch, like a couple weeks before global launch, maybe only 1 week, I can't remember. But She absolutely changes things. So the way her ultimate works, where she basically reduces the damage you take by 50%, gives you life drain and attack. This is so damn powerful. And honestly, she's like the most pivotal campaign pushing unit, but also fantastic in the Dream Realm to help you survive those big attacks from bosses that would otherwise one-shot your team. She allows you to survive. Now you do take the damage on a delayed aspect, but if you pair her with a Smokey or something that can heal that damage back as it comes through, she basically just postpones the big nuke so that you can survive through the nuke in the initial phase. Then you can heal it up once you actually take the damage, and she is so fantastic for it. But in campaign, she has the best synergy with another must-have unit, but everyone gets her for free, which is Cecilia. Because Cecilia is going to be most people's carry. And the way Cecilia works when she uses her ultimate and she brings out Mr. Carlisle, Carlisle does a ton of damage and can also tank. But if you get Carlisle out before you use this ultimate from Coco, then Carlisle also gets these buffs where he gets damage reduction and lifesteal and attack increase. It makes him a better tank, a better damage dealer, and he can sustain himself for longer, meaning he can serve that tanking purpose. So in a lot of teams, you'll see that people will run Brutus. Brutus just buys you that 10 seconds to generate energy on your Cecilia. Then Brutus is dead. You summon Mr. Carlisle onto the field. And then once Mr. Carlisle's on the field, that is when you go ahead and you use your Coco's ultimate. And now you've lost your first tank, but now you've got your second tank, which is actually just a DPS character's pet, but works as a functioning tank. So I just think Coco, once again, she has been the most valuable elite unit in the game, in my opinion, in the early progression. I think she's just the top tier of elite units for early game campaign pushing and early game Dream Realm. Some fights in Dream Realm, once you're getting towards the end of them, you can drop Coco and just run Smokey because maybe your characters have enough tankiness to survive. But in general, for AFK stage pushing and for Dream Realm, she's been the most pivotal unit. And then obviously honorable mention goes to Odie because he is fantastic sub damage dealer for those things. He can also work as a damage dealer in your AFK stage pushing. But like I said, choosing the 5th unit is Coco. So just to recap, number 1 most pivotal unit in the early game, Smokey. Best heals, hands down. He can get interrupted, but you can adjust your formation to avoid it in most situations. Absolute monster. Next is Brutus. Just straight invincibility tank for 5 seconds. Loses value later in the game, but if you can pull him on day 1, he will help you push really high deficits super early. Next one being Rowan, which I don't have, so I'd have to go to the book. Just super clutch in certain situations. Not a healer that you need every battle, but when you need him, he's fantastic. Does also help a bit in arena, but just a really clutch one copy character if you have him. And then Thoren. Thoren is the other one. Once again, Thoren just great for Cursed Realm. Decent in AFK stage pushing, not quite as good as Brutus in the early game. Later game, that changes, but fantastic unit to help you push scores in the Cursed Realm in the early game. And that final unit, the only elite one that I mentioned, is Coco. Just an absolute savage unit with a wicked design, I might add. I love these types of designs, but that is going to be it for this one. Once again, let me know in the comments if you do like this type of thing, and I can do one for the mid game, looking at Epic Plus heroes that really change the game. Let me know. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching. Hope you have an awesome day, and I look forward to seeing the next one. Cheers.